Welcome to the Intuitive CEO podcast, a space where we explore the future of leadership at the intersection of AI, intuition, and psychology. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can create truly happy workplaces, harness the power of human connection, and redefine success in our fast-changing world. I'm your host, Gemma, Master Intuitive Psychology Coach, co-founder of The Happy Workplace, and CEO of HubGem, where I've seen firsthand how culture, people-first leadership, and technology can combine to build award-winning organizations. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Nick from the Ideas Agency. So Nick has an incredible background in product design, marketing, innovation, and business, and he brings a truly unique perspective to how ideas shape the world around us. He firmly believes that nothing is impossible, and that as individuals, we are capable of far more than we know. For him, the real magic lies in getting ideas out into the world, not holding them back out of fear or embarrassment. So through his work at the Ideas Agency, Nick helps organizations unlock creativity, overcome these barriers that are holding them back, and bring innovation to life. I can't wait for you to hear his story and insights. Nick, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you. That was a really good, you need to be my hype person. I'm going to that's what I need, is like that kind of introduction coming onto stage. But yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you.
So start us off. What matters most to you in life and in the work that you do?
What matters most to me in life, I would say, is having a challenge and going after that challenge and being purposeful about it. And that can be in business or it can be in your personal life. But knowing that you can overcome something through the application of your creativity. And really, that's what we do at the Ideas Agency, working with businesses, in that if you think creatively about a challenge, you are able, or there's a propensity where you're more likely to overcome it. So that's really what I'm passionate about, is creativity and unlocking that within other people and helping them with their challenges. And so that's the thing that we do and what I've built my business around, because I've always been creative from a very, very early age.
That's great. I mean, that's the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned there from an early age,
Yeah.
and that this is something you're really passionate about. Can you share a little bit about your early life and how those experiences shape the way you think about creativity and your approach to innovation today?
Yeah. So I was super lucky to have gone through quite a traumatic experience when I was younger. And the reason why I say I'm lucky is because it led me on the path to understanding what I want to do with my life. So when I was between the ages of 5 and 7, my mother became severely ill, like critically ill, and she had cancer. And so she wasn't able to do certain things around the house. So I used to always think of ideas to enable her to just do things like cleaning the windows and stuff like that. I remember I took a toy once and I changed it and I put this sponge on the end of it. And I was like, it was like a concertina mechanism. So when you closed it, the sponge went up, and when you opened it, the sponge went down. So I was probably 6, and I remember making it, and then I gave it to my mum, and I was like, look, mum, you could use this to clean the windows because you don't have to reach, it'll do it for you. And I remember at that point, I saw the link, or my mind made the link between having an idea and then making it happen and the impact you can have on people. So I always wanted to be an inventor. So after that point, everyone would ask me, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? I'll be an inventor. And whenever there was a challenge in childhood, I just mean anything like someone said, we can't do that because this is broken, I would always try and fix it. And so I've always had that in my head of like, I can overcome stuff. But it was only because of that early experience that led me on to that. So I always knew I wanted to be in the creative field. And then moving through that journey, I went and did product design at uni. And like many students, we have absolutely no money. And so I was always like, okay, how can I still get the result, but not spend any money to get the result? And so that played a big part in how I think about ideas and creativity. I remember once I was in Denmark. And so I go to Denmark for like an exchange, and my student loan hadn't come in, and I ran out of money, and my dad didn't have any money. We didn't have any money really. And I was like, what am I going to do? But instead of like being like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I was like, oh my God, amazing. Like I get to figure out how I can solve this thing by myself. And so genuinely, like I was in Copenhagen and I had no money. So I went and I was like, oh, there's fruit trees around. So I started picking fruit. And then the one I had like, well, I said no money. I probably had the equivalent of like 20 euros, which was krona, 20 krona. And so I go and buy rice and stuff. And then through that, it was just like, it was a bit of an adventure. So I maintained that for like 2 weeks. And then I managed to continually pester my uni, who needed me to be there to pick up the check, to send the check. And I got the money. And that was the end. That was the end of it, of that little adventure. But it was good. And I think that's where they're like, nothing's impossible. The challenges are actually the best thing that can happen. So anyway, so I go through that. I leave university and I create a while I'm at uni, you know, you do loads of jobs at university, don't you? And I created well, when I was there, I was doing a summer job and I was doing computer coding for what was at the time British Energy. I had no idea how to code, but I'd done some work for them previously and they're like, oh, Nick's reasonably smart. Like, we'll give him some books. So they gave me 2 books to read on coding, which actually I didn't read. They don't know that I didn't read it, but I didn't read. What I did instead I'll give you the premise of the job. The whole thing they wanted to do was pull in data from nuclear sites and output it as a report. They used to do it manually. And so I was kind of like, oh, good, nothing's impossible. Like, here's a challenge. I reckon I can do this. Well, I quickly found out that I could do a bit of coding, but not to the degree that I needed to do. So yeah, they gave me these books, which I didn't read. But what I did discover was Microsoft Word had a pinball game in it and Excel has a flight simulator hidden in it. So during the summer, I played a bit of that. And then it came to crunch time. They're like, right, Nick, you actually do have to, you know, how are you getting on with this computer coding? I was like, yeah, good. And then I went on the internet and found a piece of code that I managed to pour into the code that I'd written, and it worked. Like, it pulled the data. It was amazing. It pulled this data in, output this report. It was I was like, oh, that's amazing. But anyway, while I was there, we had engineers going back and forth to China, and we had 2 suspected cases of SARS. And so what I did, I was in the loo washing my hands, and some guy walked out without washing his hands. And I was like, oh, it's gross. Like, I'm going to have to touch that door handle now to get out. So in my final year of uni, I invented this like self-cleaning door handle, which kept a hygienically clean surface. And I finished my degree and I was like, right, I'm going to launch this, you know, like completely green, had no experience in business. And I needed to fund myself. So I would get up at about 4:30 in the morning. I'd go and hand the most Metro, you know, remember the Metro newspapers? They hand them out in London. So I handed out the most in the country. I was handing out these papers 4:30, and it's great because it's hard because it's freezing cold and you don't want to be there. But actually, you start to enjoy it after a while, and you meet so many different people. Like, you know, I would never speak or have the opportunity really to speak to like homeless people, people from the military, or people landlords going to put their open the pubs and stuff. It was great. So I'd meet so many different people. I do that from about 5 a.m. to 9, go in the office between 9 to 5, and then in the evenings work in a bar. So that was like supporting this whole, like, I'm going to launch this. And what I was really good at was creating ideas, but making them look real. So one of the most valuable things that I learned at uni was Photoshop, on a pirate version of Photoshop. So I could make ideas look real, and that was so powerful at that time. And I could build websites as well. So I built a website for it, and I had Unilever and another bit, I think it was like maybe Kimberly Clark or a Unilever rang me on my mobile phone and were like, can we put your door handles into our factories? And I was like, this is incredible, you know, it's just incredible. And I was like, no, because I mean, it's still, you know, I need some help with manufacturing, because all I got was prototypes. Anyway, and then I was talking to Dyson about it, because Dyson had heard from their research that people would, okay, they've got their air blades and they've got hygienically clean hands, but then they're having to touch gross door handles, so it fitted quite well. And at that time, I managed to win a grant, which also helped to help fund the product. But I'd spent a huge amount on lawyers' fees, because I was like, right, what I need to do is protect my IP That's the first thing they teach you is like, have an idea and protect your IP. And in the business incubation unit that I was at, and actually I put in a huge amount of money into that. And consequently, I couldn't survive anymore on it. And the pattern lapsed, but I was like, I've got to find someone who could perhaps resurrect it. And Dyson, I managed to get past the gatekeepers and they liked the idea. But then one of their IP staff, I think it was maybe their head of IP, came to me and were like, Nick, we can't protect it because the patent's lapsed. And I was like, oh man, okay, fine. And so I kind of like put the idea to bed. Now, if I was doing it again now, I'd be like, I've got an idea. I need to test whether there's a need for it. I would do that. I wouldn't go into like IP straight away. Anyway, so then I went and I saw this advertisement for like advertising scholarship scheme, an ad agency in London. It was Saatchi and Saatchi, who are like a big ad agency. They were like the place you wanted to get in, right? Back in 2007 or 8. So I went and I got an interview, and everyone else that interviewed there were, I would say, they were all like super smart Oxford and Cambridge graduates. But the thing that got me in was the fact that I'd gone through the journey of like trying to make an idea real. I realized when I was there, I was the only one not from Oxford or Cambridge and the only one without any connections into the agency. It was based on the journey that I've been through. And I think that application really helped because it made me stand out from everyone else, all the other candidates. And there were a lot of applications to get. It was a 3 or 4 stage interview process.
Wow.
And yeah, that was amazing doing that. And then anyway, through that, I went through that journey, and I remember the first or second day, I went to my boss, and her name she's the best boss I've ever had. Her name was Rose Wangan Jones. She's an amazing woman. She instilled a lot of belief in you. And on the second day, I knocked on her door. I was like, Rose, I don't want to be an account manager. And she looked at me like, you little shit. Do you know how many people want to be where you are? Because I was on the Olay account, which was amazing. It was just brilliant experience with some incredibly talented women, commercially astute, very driven. It was an amazing environment to be around. But I really wanted to be on the creative floor because that's where, I felt at home. And so I'd suggest ideas. And at that time, well, you needed a creative partner. You couldn't just go in like, oh, I'm a creative, I'll think of ideas. You need a writing partner with you. So they're like, you don't have a writing partner, Nick, so you can't do this. And she said, I think you should go and look at either IDEO or What If. So I was like, oh, I'd never heard of What If before. So What If are an innovation agency. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go and that sounds fun. Like go down to their offices. It's awesome offices. She wasn't wrong. It was kind of like, it was almost like seeing that there is a place where you can go and think of ideas and sell them. Like it's incredible. Saatchi's is like that as well. But this place was like dealing more with product and service. So I applied and I got an interview, and I think it was a couple of interviews. And then for an inventor role, I was like, I am born to do this. Like I am, but it's difficult, isn't it? Saying I'm really good at thinking of ideas, but I knew I could have smashed it. And the reason I say could have is because the head of HR said to me after the interviews, look, I can't put you forward to the board interview as an inventor because you're too young. You're 24 and our youngest inventor's 42. And I was like, no, just give me a shot. I know, like, again, like nothing's impossible. Give me a shot, please, please. No, she like flatly refused. And I was so disappointed because I was coming to the end of my time in London because I was running out of money, didn't have a job. So I was like, I really wanted to do it. I know I would have been brilliant at it. And I left London and then came back to Gloucester, which is where I'm from. And I went from being at Saatchi's and interviewing a What If to coming home and being like, I don't know I need to work like with creative people. But Gloucester at the time, there wasn't really anything. And I went from there to working in a coal yard. So I'm working in this coal yard, like chopping wood, hauling coal. Like it sounds like I'm a Victorian. And then I was like, there's got to be something better than this. And so I went and worked for a digital agency, like a small digital agency, started learning about digital. And then really it was there that we'd have clients come to us and we try and solve their problems with a website. And invariably it didn't solve their problems. Sometimes it did, but sometimes it didn't. And so I then set up the ideas agency with a view to, I'm really good at thinking of ideas. And my original aim was like to work with like I wanted to work with the biggest brands in the world, right? But I'm starting from my kitchen table. So I'm like, how am I going to work with the biggest brands in the world? And actually, it was very difficult to work with the biggest brands in the world because they want to work with security, as in they need an agency to be secure. So if you're an account director for a brand, you can go, well, do you know what? I hired Saatchi's, so it's not my fault. Whereas if they hire a kid who sat at his kitchen table, it's like, well, you're getting fired for doing that. But what I did, I was at a networking meeting and I met a guy called Phil, and Phil ran a printers down in Bristol. And he said he had this really thick Bristolian accent. He ran a business with his business partner called Tony, and their business was called Phil Tone. I was like, that's such a good name. And he was like, right now, we need, what I'm going to do, what I reckon we should do. I was like, right. He goes, we're going to make paper toys. I was like, why are you going to make paper toys? This was at the networking meeting. He was like, we're going to make paper toys because there's a bloke down the road, he runs a printers and he's doing all right, like sells these paper toys. I was thinking, I'll come in and we'll just chat. And like, if, you know, he was like, okay, yeah, fine, come in. So he sit down and he keeps going on about these paper toys. And like in here, instinctively and intuitively, I'm thinking, it's just not the right thing. Like it's not got there's nothing about it that works. Like, fine, you sell a paper toy or whatever for like 10 quid and within 3 seconds, it's like the kid destroys it. I'm like, it's just not I just don't think there's good margin in it, but I don't think it's the one. Anyway, I do some research. And one of the things I found out was one of the highest margin goods in the paper industry is wrapping paper, right? But it's got really bad environmental credentials because it's like foiled and whatever. And so I'm like, okay, I think I've come up with an idea. We should produce plantable wrapping paper where you can grow the design on the front of the wrapping paper, whether it's like wildflowers or carrots or broccoli or peppers or whatever it is, right? Okay. He's like, that sounds like we need to prove it's a good idea. So I was like, right, that's the next thing, right? Don't go and make the thing. Let's just prove. And so I'm reasonably good at drawing and I do all the designs for it and we print it out and we do a tiny bit of PR and it gets picked up by Fox News. So now you know that the idea's got some traction because it's kind of like, oh, there's PR, like places are interested in this, to write a story about it. And it was coming up towards Christmas. So it was like this perfect storm, really, where everything kind of like overlapped and merged. And so, Fox News come do like a piece on it. We're interviewed. And suddenly, like, retailers just come in for this, like, idea. And we're like, shit, we've got to make it real now. So we go and find this biodegradable, it's called seed matting, right? So you can get these things, seed mats. Originally, we spray mounted for the PR piece. We spray mounted, which is glue, the design to the back of these seed mats, which obviously isn't good for the environment. But we made it real. So we did it without glues and we used vegetable inks in the production. And we made this product and it just went absolutely wild on PR. And because of that, like, I guess not waiting for the big brand to go, you're good with ideas, we should work with you. We created something which caused that. And so that's why I'm like, okay, nothing's impossible, but don't wait for permission. Go and create something that'll show them that you can do this. And then through that, after that project, it got picked up by a larger agency. And subsequent to that, they then came to me for ideas for absolutely massive brands like Pepsi or Danone or Cloetta. And then through that, like another agency, and that was like Rolls-Royce, BMW Mini. There's so many, Red Bull. And that's how it all kind of like unfolded.
That's an incredible story of entrepreneurship at its finest, that determination and that, I guess, that drive to show there is a way that this can be done. And I think that can be I think it's essential in business, but it can be so hard for people to have that same level of determination, right? To be, I'm going to take it and go with it. And I know we've chatted previously, and I know that you have a bit of a hero in your story, in your dad.
Yeah.
I wondered if you could just share a little glimpse behind that about what your dad taught you that has led to you going on this journey.
Yeah. So dad always said to me in Greek, so he was always like, Nikola, potena mixikonis ta heria subsila, which means Nicholas, you should never lift your hands up. It basically translates as don't surrender. And he's like, you never give up. You keep going. And he always said to me, you know, all you need is a tiny, tiny little trickle of water to come through the wall, because once you've got that, that'll turn into a little stream, and then that'll turn into a river, and then that'll turn into an ocean. And he was very pragmatic about that. He's like, do not give up. And I was lucky because I had that behind me. Like, I had that support. And also, he'd been through so much in his life, like so much hardship. Like, I'll give you an example. He had to leave home at 12 because it was just a rough experience. And he left home, and the only belonging he had was a vest. So he leaves home, joins the Merchant Navy. And by the time he's 12 and a half, he's in Japan. And so at 12 and a half, by yourself in Japan, you have to learn to be self-sufficient, and you have to learn to be resilient. And so I'm in no way, shape or form as resilient as my father was, but he also was able to understand humans. Now, I think that I do understand humans, which is why I can create ideas which resonate, because I'm not looking for anything other than this works for you because you need to solve this pain in your life. And so having emotional intelligence, I believe, comes from him. And he had massive EQ to the point where by the time he was 18, he was asked by his company. He worked for a shipping company called the Olanderis Company. And they were like, Mike, can you go on to the worst performing ships and just help them turn it around? Because you're always on the best performing one. He was like the common denominator. He'd get moved around and the ships would do really well. And he was a chief steward, so he was responsible for getting all the food onto the ships. He was really good in business, and so he'd negotiate rates, get all the food on. But he said, you know, I'd go on some ships and there'll be a 55-year-old, 60-year-old captain there. He'd be like, who is this 18-year-old coming onto my ship telling me what to do? And he goes, so I would say, one of the captains would ring up the company and really angry, like, who's this kid? And the company, he said he was stood next to one of the captains, and the captain said, look, this guy's just turned up. I don't know who he is. He's telling me that I need to do this and that to the ship. And they were like, who is it? He said his name's Mike Venios. And he said all the company did was put the phone down on the captain. And my dad said, the reason they put the phone down on you is because I'm meant to be here. So this is what we're going to do. He wasn't afraid because he'd grown up in such hardship and, you know, experienced the world by himself. He saw himself at 18 as having as much authority as a 55-year-old captain. So he goes, we're going to get all the men, line them up outside the boat. He goes, I used to walk down the line of the crew, and by the time I got to the end, I'd say to the captain, it's this guy and this guy, these two are your problem. You need to get them out. And so he would remove the bad apples, you could say, and suddenly the ship would start performing. And he'd also go and look at what you're feeding your crew. Like, you need to, and so he would like change their diet and stuff, and as a consequence, the ship's performance would go up. And I think, like, to your earlier point around like being resilient in business and that having that self-belief, there are elements of that, but there's a bit before it, which is just understanding what you're interested in and what you love. Like, I think a lot of people say, oh, just do what you love, but that's very difficult. It's better to do what you're interested in first, because you'll tend to fall in love with it. And I think that's another thing that I found out. Dad didn't tell me to do what I love. Actually, when I said, oh, I'm going to start the ideas agency, he was like, Nick, you're good with ideas, but like, people won't pay for ideas. Because he came from a point of view of like, I want to protect my children. And so protecting your children meant get a job in something that's familiar. Like, he didn't understand creativity, but he did understand a good idea when he heard it. So I would, again, through my younger years, I'd be pitching him ideas, and I was waiting for that, like, him to go. It was, you know, sometimes you go, no, that's terrible because of this. No, that's terrible because of this. But I was waiting for the one that went, that's quite a good idea. Like, I was waiting for that like dopamine hit when he said that. And actually, I remember I pitched him the door handle, and the hygienic door handle was one where he went, that's quite a good idea. And that's why I was like, okay, he's given me permission to go and pursue it. And I realized that some people they're not lucky enough to have the backing of someone who, you know, supports you or believes in you. But I think that, yeah, if you can do something that you're interested in, that you can then love, you can create something. And if you do create something, then you've basically won at life. You get to earn money, especially if you can earn money from it. you can earn money from doing the thing that you love. I think that's pretty,
I love that. So, what about all the people who want to do this but find themselves held back? Like you must come across this when when you're working in ideas and innovation. There must be great ideas that then just don't progress for whatever reason. What is it that
yeah.
holds people back?
So it's the fear of embarrassment is what holds people back. So, and I think that a lot of ideas die because people are trying to build prototypes which look great. So when I said earlier with the traditional method, which was have an idea and then get some IP and build a website around it, like that traditional process. This was before like the lean startup and stuff came out. Which is a book about really getting your ideas out there as cheaply and as quickly as possible. You would try and make the website or the prototype as beautiful as you possibly could because you didn't want to be embarrassed about it. And so I think that's one of the main things, like people are afraid to put their ideas out because there is an element whereby, or a chance, they could be embarrassed or feel like people will ridicule them. And that is the biggest killer of innovation, not just if someone's got an idea, but companies as well. Companies spend time, money, resource, whatever you want to call it. They'll have an idea and they'll put effort into molding this idea, not getting the essence of the idea out there so they can understand whether it's a good one or not. And that's what people need to do is, you've got no code platforms now like Lovable where you can build a landing page about your idea, get it out and test whether your market has that particular pain as an example. And you can do it in 2 hours. You don't need to have a dev team. And there's a really good analogy for this. And it's a guy called Mark Randolph. Mark Randolph is the founder of Netflix, and he's obviously done very well for himself. And as a result, he has a lot of people pitching ideas to him. And he said, I get all these people coming up to me. And there was this one girl, she came up to me, she goes, I've got an amazing idea for renting out women's clothes. And he said, okay, well, what do you need? And she goes, well, I need about 300 grand. And because I don't have a business development person, I don't have a marketing person, I don't even have any developers, I need to build this platform. And he said, I think you could probably test the idea and get it out for about $5. And she goes, what do you mean? He goes, get a piece of paper, write women's clothes for hire, and stick that piece of paper to your door. And if you don't get a knock at the door, I've saved myself $295,995. But he goes, but if you do get a knock at the door, you get to understand about how you feel about renting out your clothes, how the customer feels about renting the clothes, how they feel about washing the clothes, the pricing. And you come to someone like me and you don't say, I've got an idea. You say, I have found out that. And he goes, the 0.00001% that say, I have found out that, are way more investable than the ones that say, I've got an idea. And I think that rings true. People do not put their ideas out there for fear of embarrassment. And so do companies. They don't put their ideas out there for fear of embarrassment. And so
Yeah.
and as a consequence, they don't move.
Yeah. And I see that. You see that in life, in business. And these fears, as we know it, they're very real, but they really do hold people back. So thinking about that in business, I guess thinking about the role of courage, right? How can leaders cultivate the courage they need to push through embarrassment or fear? Like, how can we overcome this? What can leaders do?
I think the first thing to do, well, there's a phrase in, I would say, corporate land, which is like psychological safety. And I understand the premise of that is basically making your team feel secure so that they can be candid and they can be open and, they can criticize ideas without anyone feeling it's an affront to themselves. I think that the way that leaders can do that and almost like perpetuate this, look, we're going to learn if this idea is good or not. Either way, it's a win. So Diageo have a thing where they actively will look to kill ideas. And that is just as valuable as seeing something which is successful. And the way that you kill an idea is by testing it. And I think that if you are an organization that has aspirations to be progressive, it's not enough to say, look, we accept everyone's ideas. We're completely open as a culture. You need to show that you're doing it. And showing you're doing it means putting out your idea, and it means putting out that like not great piece of creative, or it means taking a piece of tech and just seeing if V1, which is a terrible version of it that's actually based on some other technology that isn't the platform you eventually want to create, is relevant or not. So you need to show as an organization you're doing it. And I actually think it instills excitement into organizations. If you have an organization where your staff are like, okay, what's our like strategy? Like what strategic things are we going to achieve? What ideas can we create around that? And how are we going to create those tests to see whether they're good or not? Like that is exciting. Whereas, right, I want you to come up with some ideas. This is our strategic aim. Okay, cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to have this like hierarchical structure where the CEO or whoever's leading it is like, no, that's a rubbish idea. No, that's a rubbish idea. I don't think we should do that. No, that might embarrass us. No, like that's not freeing if you're working within that culture. So I think you need to be an organization that is shown to walk the walk and is not afraid really to be embarrassed. I saw this brilliant thing actually, which was on LinkedIn, that was like, the price of success is embarrassment. And that's true.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, it speaks very true. You know, some of the best ideas have come from some of the worst. But the fact that you started, try something to begin with is where the power lies. And so on that, just as we approach the end here, some words of wisdom. What is one thing that you would like entrepreneurs and leaders to remember when it comes to their ideas and their potential?
I could say something like super cliche, like your potential is limited by yourself. I do believe that the self-talk can be hugely impactful to you as a leader and as an individual. I think the thing you need to realize is that nobody is more capable than you are if you're willing to apply yourself. Nobody is more capable than achieving something that you or your business needs or wants to achieve than you are. You just need to be able to have the determination. I would say not determination's not even the right word. You just need to understand that if there are people who are deemed to be less capable but are super successful, they're there because they just backed themselves and they did it. And so you can do it too. Like that, there is no like esoteric skill that someone else has that you don't have, that you can't learn, or that you can't get to where you want to get to. You just got to like back yourself, believe yourself. Yes, there are going to be loads of times when you're like, this is, oh man, I should just give up. Like there will be that, and that's okay. That's normal. But if you believe there's something you want to do, the most important thing is to go out and do it. Don't stay and think about it for years, because the worst thing you can say to yourself in 30 years' time is, yeah, I thought about doing that. When you see something, you know, that's super successful or something that you wanted to do. Yeah, I thought about doing that, but I stayed doing what I was doing because, you know, it was the safe thing to do. Oh man, like unfilled potential, that's a killer. You've got to go and make your dream, or make the thing that you want to do, go out and try. Just try it. You've got to try it.
Yeah.
So that was a terrible way of doing it. But yeah, that's what I would, you know, say.
I love that. Just finally, if people want to find out more about how to work with you, what should they do?
You can go to theideasagency.com, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. It's Nicholas Venios. I'm one of the only ones on there. But go to theideasagency.com. You can get in contact with me there.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
That's all right. Thank you.